Thank you, Mr. Pandit, the World Marketing Congress, everyone who's here, and all the incredible speakers and panelists. I wish I could just sit down and take notes, because everything you've been saying, it's like, it resonates so deeply, and love all the examples that you shared, and it's incredible. Life comes full circle. You know, when my mom used to say that when I was a kid, and I was like, bakwas. But as an adult, you realize I started my career in Mumbai as a sports nutritionist in marketing communications for Kellogg's. So wellness and marketing have always been, I've straddled both the worlds my entire career, like spanning 2 decades now. And it's incredible to be back here. So it's like the daughters come home. So and then to have Mr. Bachchan do the national anthem, it was very emotional. So thank you all for being here. I'm new to wearing reading glasses, so I never know when I'll need them. And as Mr. Pandit was saying, my session will be a little bit different from what we've been talking about all day, because for a lot of those of you who are in the audience wanting to start your own businesses, as entrepreneurs, micro businesses, I mean, that's how most of us start out, right? Sometimes you might be your brand. And what happens then? And especially in the world of business, in the world of wellness, pardon my French, there's a lot of BS out there. And having that clarity is very, very important. So who am I? If you'd like, read this, but what I mean by that is I was talking to my mother-in-law when I landed in Mumbai, and I was with her. And we were talking about renovation, and I know somebody talked about Asian paints, and she was talking about Asian paints, and very emotional about it. And she was like, Beta, I tried a different color, and it was gray. It's always been beige, it's gray. And she's like, and she's like, what about you? I said, again, look at this. I have yellow chairs, and blue sofa, and red couches. And what I mean by that is, branding very often, people think is, oh, this is what my brand is, but especially as a human being, if you are, and when I say face, I don't mean literally the face, but if it's you who is the brand, it's what people think of you, not what you think of yourself. So I could, in a moment, try to do the thing of saying, I love beige too, and nothing against it, my husband does as well. But that's not me. So people who choose to work with me, this is just a small example, authenticity matters, so they need to know who I am. For those of you, if you're looking for a book on stress, that's my latest book, I just realized that. But for me, straddling this world of Ayurveda and branding has gone on forever. And I started my company, Nimmi Life, in honor of my mom. She was not a healer who had gone to some medical school or anything. But you know how Indian mothers are, I don't know what is it about them. They put their hands on your forehead and they know exactly what herbs you need, what khana you need to eat, and all of that. And my mother was that as well. And so when she passed away, I said I wanted to start this company because she gave life to others. And so that's what Nimmi Life is about. Like I was saying, I've been doing this for a very long time, and very often people have asked me, like, what is common between Ayurveda and branding, and why both of these? And I also teach marketing communications and branding at a business school in New York. And I tell people, in my experience, I've realized there are a lot of really, really, really smart people in the world of wellness, but they don't know how to communicate. So we have this beautiful wisdom, especially Ayurveda, my bias, but they don't know how to do the storytelling. They don't know how to be authentic. Has anyone ever gone on LinkedIn and read a caption, and it's a bad version of ChatGPT, and it's someone's LinkedIn update, and then you meet them in person, they are nothing like it. And they're the people who come and tell me, oh, why am I not getting clients? I'm like, when I can't relate to you, you and your brand don't seem they align, how will a client work with you? Especially when it comes to your health. There's a lot of trust involved, right? There's a lot of intimacy involved. And so what happens is, in this world that we are in, where algorithms need to be everything, I can't keep up. I mean, I have to keep up to teach my students, but I personally, for my brand, I can't keep up. Like, let's do reels today. No, now let's do carousel. No, now let's add music. And so in that rush of trying to be cool and trying to be everything, we are nothing. And again, going back to the basis of being an Ayurvedic doctor, I might have the best reels, but if I don't know my substance, what's the point? If I can't help people heal, what is the point? So for me, this was, I think it's time to bring out the glasses if I want to look at the laptop. So post-pandemic, we were all trying to survive, right? I think we still are. And one of the brands I worked with, they were like, what do we do? What should we change? Our logo, should we get a new studio, new colors? And all I said to them is, people need to start feeling safe again. And it's the language that you use, you know, the space that you hold, that's true branding. Because if you're a yoga studio, your whole idea, and I'm also a trauma-informed yoga teacher, so yoga for me, it's not just a mind practice, but it's also helping people feel safe. The number of high achievers I have in my classes who have a trauma or have a grief, and they're completely like trigger points, you know, people walk around eggshells on them. If you can create a safe space for that, that is where you need to invest in. It's not about the best brand colors, best logos. And I know our panelists talked about influencers. Don't even get me started. When someone tells me I'm an influencer for a living, I was like, influencing whom? You know, there has to be some level of experience, and I'm not dismissing that. But there has to be some level of experience, and I'm speaking very specifically to the space of wellness. Because if we believe everything that's out there, that's when we are hurting ourselves. And you know, in the US or in most of the West, Ayurveda is not licensed. And there is a reason, because people do 3-month courses and they start treating other people. Right? So, and Ayurveda is customized. We don't have like, always have statistics of 100 people do this. It's always customized reports and things like that. So one has to be very, very careful in what we think of influencers, how we using branding, what do we think of marketing. So there's also this whole world of quick fixes, detoxes, things like that. And we've seen brands promise overnight healing, do the 7-day detox, or do a manifestation course and you'll find the best partner, you know, you'll find your soulmate. So, and this is what bothers me, because they think they're doing good branding, marketing, and in the world of AI, we also talk a lot about ethics. But even within the space of branding, where is our ethics? So you're basically manipulating people at their lowest when they are vulnerable. Who's looking for a soulmate? Who's manifesting? We all have hit the lows, right? Why do people buy lotto tickets? Why are people gambling? Because they've hit the lowest at some point, and ethics becomes a question here. So the question becomes, how do we brand wellness without commodifying it, without using buzzwords like mindfulness, detox, balance, and not knowing what that means? And I'll share examples of some of my patients, I'm supposed to call them clients, when they come to me because they've followed something on social media because that reel went viral and maybe the person who had this account had 5 million followers, and they tried something for cold and cough. And that led to further congestion and fever. And I'm just keeping it very PG-3 with how they hurt themselves, right? So they're talking about all these lingos and they're hurting themselves. So how do we survive as brands, stay authentic, stay ethical, stay sustainable, and still be successful? And it's possible. The storytelling aspect. So again, it's like coming home to all the things that all the amazing speakers have been talking about. So recently, just 2 weeks ago, one of my classes that I teach in integrated marketing and communications, I told the students, instead of, I don't like gotcha moments, because as a yoga teacher, as a grief coach, the worst thing we can do is dysregulate someone's nervous system. So all my assignments are based on practical stuff. It's not like take an exam. I hated that when I was growing up. Cram it, go vomit. You get an A grade and then had no idea the next day what the exam was about. So it has to be application-based, right? Anybody here use Loom? I think most people would raise their hands. Loom to create videos? Okay, thank you. What do you think of it? Yeah? What do you like about it? Okay, so what he's saying is, thank you for sharing, that Loom is very easy to use. It can make really good videos. So if you haven't, it's super easy, download it. It's great to send reviews to your teams. Even if you're a wellness practitioner, you can create short videos for your clients, explaining. But what I love about Loom is the storytelling, the authenticity. So if I ask my students to write a paper, they can go to ChatGPT, right? But when I ask them, do you create a video on Loom, their personality shows. And what I mean by that is the storytelling comes through. The authenticity comes through. You can't write about authenticity. The ads that you shared with us, we saw the vulnerability, the emotional storytelling. And so something as simple as that. So the people whose submission stood out, theirs weren't perfectly curated videos. Theirs were the most vulnerable stories. And that hits a very different kind of emotional frequency. So now here comes the Ayurveda bit. I always like to ask this, even though it's India, I don't want to assume. How familiar are people with Ayurveda? Aside from the products out there, just the basic concept. Okay, so few. That's refreshing. Okay, so I'll just go super simple. There are 3 doshas of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and we follow the elemental system. Each dosha is made up of 2 elements. Now, how is that applicable in the world of branding? So when you look at your Vata brands, and I'll get into examples, they're very creative, they're dynamic, but it's your Vata person is that person who's here physically, but the mind is already in 3 different continents because they're thinking of 3 different strategies and stuff like that. Maybe highly spiritual, but when you ask them what they were thinking 2 minutes ago, they have no idea. That's it, so they need grounding. When you look at a Pitta person, if you look at the world leaders, most of them have very high Pitta, a lot of fire in them, right? Out of balance, we know how certain world leaders can be, no naming names there, I still have to go back home. And if anyone releases the video, we are not friends any longer. So they're very driven, they're very purposeful, but what happens is when they're out of balance, they lack compassion. So some of the ads that Mr. Pradeep shared with us, they had a lot of compassion, right? And imagine that imbalance if it was devoid of just that. If it was like the father hitting and somebody else hitting, the kid not going to school, that lacks compassion. And maybe it does the job of what it needs to do if we're talking about a domestic violence case, because we need to illustrate certain things. But we are talking about little girls' education. A softer approach might be better. So your kaphas are basically the kind of people who are your 2 a.m. friends. You call them, they'll never judge you. In terms of brand, they're the same, but they can be a little bit unmotivated. So if you look at Vata brand, for example, their social media feed, let's focus on that, very erratic, right? Mr. Pandit, how are we doing on time? I want to honor that. Oh, okay. Oh, we are good. Okay. So when you think of your Vata brands, like I was saying, their feed could be all over the place. Like today, they've posted a food plate of pasta. Tomorrow, it would be sunrise. And there's nothing cohesive, no connective tissue. Why are they doing that? And so what you can do as a brand specialist is, and what we did actually was create a rhythmic calendar for them. So it's not about that ungrounded, today I wake up, we all have that friend or a cousin who wakes up, books a ticket and just disappears. And so those people, if they're handling your branding, they need help with an editorial calendar. Then when we look at a Pitta brand, some of them, so when we are talking about even life coaches, right? Or in the space of business or women working, very often the language is we need to do more, we need to be busy because busyness is worthiness and all of that. And that's your typical Pitta brand. So I worked with a life coach, and one of the things I said to her was, if you want to attract more clients, you need to slow down a little bit because not everybody wants to keep that pace. I don't want to. And that gets toxic. So even as a brand, something as simple as becoming more approachable instead of being aspirational. Very often we connect with, even if it's the Virat Kohli ad that we saw in the morning, It was aspiration, but it was also approachable, right? Kids in the neighborhood could play with him. He went up to the neighbor's house, got that cricket ball. It falls under the approachable category. So it's important to remember when to be approachable. And the last would be a Kapha brand. So this is a spa that we work with. All they had to do was add ancient rituals for modern stress. Just more consistent, because a Kapha brand could be the types, they post 5 in a day and then nothing for a month. So they need more consistency. So as we were talking about even earlier, a brand rooted in empathy doesn't speak, it listens. It remembers what people want, it carries stories, it helps people release stress and hope. I'll give you an example of my own company, Nimi Life. Again, I am very high pitta, if you can't already tell. So what happens is, I was in that aspirational category. And so it was trying to create that image unintentionally, like fix yourself. From that, we changed the language to how to honor yourself, right? So it's this, you evoke empathy, you inspire reflection, and then you prompt aligned action, which meant people signed up more, they shared the posts more, they commented more, and just simple change in language. Because when you tell people fix yourself, you're basically telling them something is lacking, even though that wasn't the intention. Versus when you say honor yourself, you're empowering them, right? You're giving them the permission to show up. So what I mean by that is, not all of us are conceited and mean. We might not even realizing the language that we use might be doing a disservice. The narrative that we use is actually holding people back instead of empowering them. So as entrepreneurs, those of you who are entrepreneurs in the room, especially pay attention to the language that you use in storytelling. Storytelling is healing. Yoga, Ayurveda, they're 5,000 years old, and through sutras, people shared stories. Like, we've all had grandparents who've told us stories. Some of them made no sense, like there's no logic in that. But a lot of this, they all told us stories. And that's the beauty of storytelling, we remember, right? So I wanted to share this model, which is the outer story, the inner story, and then the universal story. Anybody heard of Simon Sinek? Okay, so he was my professor at Columbia, and he introduced us to this whole concept of Apple, right? When they were still new, and music, it just completely changed, right? Because Apple said, oh, you want music for your iPod? We can give you 100 songs. No one ever spoke that language. People were always talking about gigabyte, databytes, whatever bytes. I'm not a tech person, I don't understand that language, like many other people. But the minute you say you can download 100 songs, I was like, oh, I get that. That's the beauty of this model. So what I mean by that is, coming back to Ayurveda, instead of saying pacify your vata, it's like, again, telling someone, don't be anxious, don't be ungrounded, sit quietly. No one wants to be that. If you change the language, and you were to say, when your brain says coffee, maybe say Ayurveda says nap. So you're being humorous, you're trying to be, you're trying to be witty. And I think I am. Okay. And then also, the other thing is, with brand voice, you have to meet your consumers where they are, especially if you're a solopreneur or if it's a small company. For the most part, yes, but especially I come from the experience of small business owners. You have to meet your consumers where they are. So with Gen Zs, for example, what works really well is Reels. And this is what I was talking about, They do very well, they respond very well, and we've done research with this. They respond very well to Reels, versus if you're talking to millennial, they like short short newsletters or something on work burnout, gut-brain connection, because they're not super young, but they're not old either. And they have the financial capabilities to start taking charge of their health. When we're talking about Gen Xers, they are your leaders, they're in high achieving positions, they want to learn about time management. because we've been again told busyness is productivity, productivity is worthiness. That's what leads to different kinds of illnesses. And boomers, which is people in their late 60s and older, they love that space of joyful aging and longevity. So it's very, very important to honor cultural roots while communicating globally. And there's a lot of discussion that goes on in the world about cultural appropriation, misappropriation. The way I look at my role is as an Ayurvedic doctor who lives in New York and knows how valuable Ayurveda is. Either I can say, oh, amla pitta, which no one understands, I think most people in the audience wouldn't either, which means heartburn. I could break it down into, don't drink that third glass of wine without judging, right? So your knowledge is rooted in Sanskrit, but if I start talking about Charak Samhita, I've lost my people. So what's the purpose? Where is my purpose? That's the whole point of the conference here, right? If I don't have a purpose of healing, of helping others, and if my ego is the one that's making all of these decisions, I don't have a purpose, I don't have a business, and I'm not helping people. So cultural authenticity, it builds cultural trust. And we'll skip all of these examples because they are really, we don't have enough time, and I wanted to make it a group activity. But the one thing I will talk about is Ayurvedic clock as a productivity tool. So, Ayurveda breaks down the day into different chunks of when is a good time to do creative work, when is a good time to do strategic work. And this has been very helpful even in corporate America, where people, the leaders who are willing to listen to this, so you're going to do your strategy meeting, instead of doing it at 7 in the morning, can you do it at 2 in the afternoon? So instead of telling them, no, in the Brahma Mahutra, you need to do a headstand, which even I don't, I would rather meet them where they are, because small shifts lead to big changes. And this burnout is very, very real. So I talk about it as energetic alignment and think of work-life balance, right? So you don't need to work to the point of proving your worthiness where you are in the emergency room. That's the language they speak, unless if I start telling them, your pitta is on fire and now you have to be on bed rest, no one is going to listen to that. And that's what I mean about cultural relevance has to be there, but if you're trying to grow a business with purpose and authenticity using storytelling, you have to meet your audience where they are. So authentic content, it becomes a bridge between curiosity and conversion. So one of my podcasts which did, I have a podcast called The Grounded Leader, and the one which did extremely well is all about burnout. It's explaining what burnout is from an Ayurvedic perspective, how holistic wellness can help, but not starting with naming 5 herbs. It's something as simple as, can you pause for 5 minutes a day? So meeting people where they are. And if they're listening to your podcast, they might look you up, they might sign up as a client, they might recommend you to somebody else. If you're a small business owner, I cannot emphasize enough how much you need that, because you won't have the big corporate budget and you're going to be looking at every penny very carefully. So this is a very practical framework on purpose-driven branding, especially if you're a solopreneur working in the wellness space. Clarity, know your dharma, your purpose. Consistency, align your message with your visuals and energy. I have a colleague whom I thought was a vegan because all his social media posts were about veganism, and a lot of respect for him. And then the other day, which is earlier this year, he ordered biryani. I was like, aren't you vegan? He said, I'm vegan for Instagram. And that really scared me, because people will do anything to sound cool, sellable, and purposeful when their work lacks soul. If you make only plant-based choices, great for you. But if someone else eats animal protein, as an Ayurvedic doctor, compassion has to be my core. I cannot judge them for that. I can tell them what is good for them, what is not good for them in the now. But lying to somebody about, I like beige, and then I show up in a yellow whatever shrug, it's the same thing as saying I'm vegan for Instagram. This whole idea of followers, I get it. because the algorithm says, and popularity contest, and then you're looking for a job, they'll say, what does your social media look like, especially in the world of marketing, right? How about trying to build a community? Again, I'm speaking from the viewpoint of an entrepreneur, a business owner. Build a community. They are your loyal people. They'll refer you. They're the ones who invest in your business. And I've had people who've connected 2 years or subscribed to my newsletter, and they've just now started working as a client. Why? Because you build relationships. It's easier to build relationships rather than buy followers and try to sell them and think they're bots, they're not buying anything. Educate people more than you sell. Lead with empathy, because marketing is emotional labor. So even though if you're not jotting down anything, just ask yourself, what emotion do I want my brand to evoke? There's no right or wrong answer, just something for you to think about. And does my current marketing reflect that emotion truthfully? Going back to that colleague who loves his biryani and steak, but says is vegan on Instagram, what are you evoking, and does your marketing strategy relate that? So for me, I think of branding as seva. I know it's a very different perspective from the corporate angle, but I truly think of it that way because it's bringing it back to Ayurveda's philosophy. True health is balance, and true branding is alignment. And so branding for me is dharma in action. It's how I serve the world by connecting wisdom to those who need it the most. Because you can't help people who are not ready to sign up for your help. And that'll be the biggest challenge for any business owner in this room, small business owner. You think you have the best product, you have the best service, but are people ready to sign up for it? So we've talked about the takeaways in more ways than once. For me, this isn't branding for visibility, it's branding for impact, especially in the holistic wellness business. Cross-cultural and cross-generational empathy keep your message alive. You can't expect your grandma to look at a reel and get all excited about it if a blog post is what she prefers. Or then telling your, I have Gen Z nephews and nieces and I have no idea what they speak because the language is, oh, that could be a slap. And I was like, how's violence a form of adulation? But then if you're reaching out to that audience, your branding has to, and you won't be for everyone, right? I'm not for everyone and I'm okay with it. And it's not coming from a place of arrogance. As a business owner, you need to know who your target audience is. So make your messaging curated accordingly. And content done with integrity, it creates longevity. And so people ask me, does this even make sense when you're saying you're not for everyone, you bring Ayurveda and branding in the same space, and it's paid off. And that's the only reason I mentioned this here. And if you'd like to connect, that's my information out there. If you're looking for a podcast, that is for high achievers, people who navigate with burnout constantly. Thank you so much. It was really nice to be here, and it was a different talk compared to what you guys came prepared for, so I appreciate you indulging me. Thank you, Mr. Pandit.